Are you looking for the key to unlock your full potential in the tech industry? Network automation isn't just a buzzword anymore. It's a game-changing skill that can redefine your career. Today, we're joined by Peter Sprygada, the VP of Product Management at Itential, a leading company specializing in network automation and orchestration solutions. Today, we're going to explore why network automation is the missing piece from your career puzzle, from transforming how networks are managed to opening doors to leadership and innovation. We'll dive deep into why this skill is essential for IT professionals looking to stand out and succeed in this competitive industry. Whether you're just starting out or a seasoned pro, this episode is packed with insights that you will not want to miss. And a big thank you to Itential for sponsoring this episode. Peter, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Oh, thank you. And I really appreciate you having me. You know, we just talked a little bit before the show started about, there's just nothing better than sitting around talking, technology and automation. And so I'm looking forward to it.
I swear I could start a whole second podcast of just people just shooting the wind about talking about tech and, and networking and stuff like that. But I just want to dive into it because I have a feeling this is going to be a great episode. Let's dive into, I mentioned network automation in the intro. Network automation is still, even though I said it's not a buzzword anymore, it still kind of feels like a buzzword in the tech industry. People don't realize how much tremendous value there can actually be in network automation. And for those of them out there that are listening to this who are not familiar, can you kind of explain what it is and why it's becoming such an essential tool in the industry today?
It's one of those interesting things from the aspect that it means so many things to so many people in so many different ways. There's no one way to define network automation. One of the things that I've talked with a lot of people about is network automation can be, not saying it should be, but can be just as simple as setting SNMP community strings on all your router devices. If that's automation to you, great. Done.
Right.
I think that what we've come to realize is, and I talk a little about this when I do some of my public speaking, is, for those of us who've been in the networking space for a long time, old guys like me who have the gray hair and more scars than we want to think about, it was always cool when we got started in networking and we learned how to, hit those CLI commands, right? VLAN 600, name server farm or whatever the case is. And it's so cool to see that happen. Interface, gigabit Ethernet 131, no shutdown, and it comes up and it's exciting. By the time you've typed that command for the 942nd time, it's a little redundant. You're like, okay, I got it now. The excitement wears off. And so what you start to realize is there's got to be a better way to go about doing this. And that's where automation starts to really kick in. You can take it in many directions, but I think that's really the starting point, and that's where we start to realize that automation can play a very key role in the network engineer's journey to helping them become a better network engineer.
I'll be honest, some people is like, network automation is going to start replacing my career, but that's not the case because it opens up so many more opportunities. And the way the tech industry is evolving and the demand that's now being put on our network with, these new things like AI and stuff coming out, network automation is becoming essential. But before we dive really much more into that, what inspired you to dive into the world of network automation, and why do you think it's such a game changer for us professionals?
Wow. So I've been doing this for, 15 plus years. And that, when I say 15 plus years, that's 15 plus years of just doing network automation. I've been doing networking for 25 plus years, but it's really been 15 plus years. And I'll be honest, I didn't take the most traditional route into this. I was I was originally trained as a software engineer who got into networking and said, hey, this is really cool stuff. And then my networking career took off. And I always loved software development. I was always, into different open source projects, nothing networking related, just open source projects. And all of a sudden I watched these two worlds start to come together and it got super exciting for me. It's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on. It's like a software program can type those commands just like I can. And so what I started to realize really quickly is that I had a lot of different ideas, and I'm still a traditional network engineer at this point. I had a bunch of different ideas about how I wanted to try, maybe it was a different route map policy. Maybe it was a different prefix list, a different way of doing things, right? To try out different scenarios. And I started to realize how quickly I could change out one scenario to the next and use automation to do that. And that's when everything started to align for me and I got super excited. And that's really what got me rolling in this industry.
Network automation is amazing. It can just streamline processes so much better. And it really it's just a great tool that can be implemented in so many different ways. Network automation is just a big umbrella term. You can actually just the sky's really becomes the limit with, just depending on your creativity. So what do you think is the most common misconception you hear about like careers in network automation, since you've been in the industry for a while now? And how would you address these doubts, to someone considering that path?
Obviously, the misconception number one, and we all heard it, right? Automation is going to replace my job. That is the number one misconception, even to this day. And
Right.
I understand why that exists. I understand where the fear is coming from. However, I think that when you start getting into automation, kind of like the story I just told about how I got into it, you start to realize that actually automation is just another tool in your toolkit. And as a matter of fact, I would assert that those network engineers that really start to embrace automation, it actually makes them better network engineers because they spend more time doing network engineering work. Let's be honest, right? We didn't get into being network engineers to type CLI commands. We got into network engineering because we wanted to build architectures and optimize architectures and understand,
We want to do the fun stuff.
That's right. Nobody got into this thing to type out and punch out CLI commands. And if you did, I really got to question, how much network engineering are you really, right? So
Right. There's so much that can be streamlined in the process. And just going back to that, it's also just like I'm hearing right now, like everyone's like, oh, AI is taking my jobs. No, it's just another tool in the toolkit. For those people who are learning how to leverage network automation, you have nothing to fear in your career field. It will only make you that much stronger of a network engineer, that much more valuable to an organization, and you'll be really able to excel your career twice as fast by having these skills. Now, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and I think you're absolutely right, and one of the things that is super important, that I always try to remind folks of is, because I also hear a lot of, well, I don't want to be a programmer, and I don't want to write code, and I don't know how to write code, and all of those are probably true to some extent. But I try to always remind network engineers, there was a point in time when you didn't know how to configure a router either. And so, if you just kind of get into it and let it take a natural course, you start to realize that exactly what you just said. It's another tool in the toolkit that you can start to leverage.
My next question for you, it's a two-part question. How do you see network automation transforming the way we manage networks in the future? And does this mean network engineers, what does this mean from a network engineer career mindset? We kind of touched on that a little bit, but what do you see the future in the store, of network automation has in store for us?
So I think, one of the areas that I think network automation really has an opportunity to transform the way we actually do things is when we start to think about leveraging automation as a way to provide a set of capabilities that can be consumed by our own customers. Network automation allows us to, I want to stop short of saying put an API in the network, because that's not what I mean. But that's the right kind of picture in your mind, in that you can actually start to leverage automation in such a way that you can expose capabilities that can be consumed by your customers. And your customers might be enterprise dev teams, enterprise operations teams, whoever they might be, without you having to get involved with every last bit of it, right? And you can start to define interfaces and define things that they can consume. And that really starts to change the dynamic of who you are as a network engineer. Because instead of being an individual where the company's trying to figure out how much can I squeeze out of you, right? Because you become a cost optimization component, you start to be an individual who's now bringing value to the organization and making more efficient use of that underlying shared infrastructure that we all know as the network.
Let's be honest, it's hard to put an ROI on networking just in general, especially a lot of the higher level executives.
Absolutely.
They understand they have to have the network, but the network's not generating money. And as a networking engineer, I can make the argument, well, the cash flow doesn't flow without the network, but it's not quite the same. But when you start to make processes that automate the network automation and can free you up to do more of the engineering things so the company can grow and you can support them better, it becomes a lot easier to start seeing that return on investment. Do you have some examples in mind of how network automation has helped organizations to start achieve their goals?
This isn't in any specific industry, any specific customer, but there are countless cases where organizations have been able to leverage organizations have been able to leverage automation in such a way that they can start to produce products and services that can be consumed by the rest of the organization. What does that really mean? How do we quantify that? One of the challenges I think that many organizations face is they deal with the app dev teams that get frustrated with trying to deal with networking folks, right? They don't want to talk to us networking people. They don't care that, what we have to go through. All they want is they want this, they want their database connected to their front end or whatever the case is, right? They don't want to talk to, they don't care about firewalls. They don't care about ACLs. They could care less about what a route map is. But the reality is we all understand that those things have to be in place, and they have to be put in place in a way that they are consumed appropriately. So in this way, what we're finding is that those organizations that have truly gone down this automation path and started to embrace it from the top down, they're starting to be able to transform that shared infrastructure into a set of capabilities that then are consumed by these app dev teams, thus streamlining the whole process, and that just makes everybody happier at the end of the day.
Let's go.
How does one get into network automation? They've heard us talking that it's becoming a skill. Where do you even start?
There's so many starting points, and you're right. There's almost too many starting points. The advice that I give, the advice that I give to anyone who asks me that question is typically always the same, and it always starts It always starts from within. You've got to have the want and desire to do it. From that point forward, just try it. Don't try and make it perfect. Don't try and make it sexy. Just try it, right? And you will learn as you go through the process. That's really kind of the best way I can tell you. Whether your choice of tools is to start writing code or consume an automation framework or to use an off-the-shelf package, it doesn't matter, but just try it. And I guess that's the best advice I always give to folks.
No, it is true. When I'm talking to people that are looking to get into networking just in general, and they're studying for different certifications and stuff, I tell them, you need to get hands-on. You need to just start doing the things, and that's going to be the best way you learn. And I think it's the same way with network automation is you just got to start getting your hands dirty. You can start small and start to scale your stuff up. You can just try to adapt some framework and, do some basic coding. And, there's tools out there that help you get an understanding of the basics. There's tons of YouTube videos out there, let's be honest, on network automation and getting your start with that. But just start breaking down some of the basics. And
that's right.
Let's be honest, it's not for everyone. There's people out there that struggle with it. But I really feel if you're going to be a successful network engineer, you have to have at least some level of knowledge in the industry. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have for career growth in at least networking. But I feel in almost every aspect of tech kind of touches on network automation. Do you agree?
I do. I think, you're absolutely right, is that if you're thinking about, I'm just starting my career or I'm early on in my career, even if I'm at my mid-career level, having a network automation, component to your skill set is absolutely critical for going forward. And even for the graybeards like myself in the world, it's still, even if you don't want to get deep into writing applications and writing code and getting it all, that's okay, but still understand, kind of the ideals behind automation and network automation and what it's doing to the organizations. Because, I think that you don't have to be someone who sits there and writes code 8 hours a day to actually leverage network automation and understand how it can be another component and how you think about designing, operationalizing, and productionizing. Wow, let me try that again. How you productize your network infrastructure. That's really what it all is all about at the end of the day.
As we've seen network automation, now you got.
See, now I've done it to you. I've done it to you.
As we see network automation become more and more prevalent, we touched on this a little bit, but how do you see the traditional role of a network engineer evolving over the next 5 to 10 years? Because, like you said, network engineering or network automation isn't something new. It's been going on for a long time, but I feel within the last couple of years, it's really become mainstream. So how do you see that affecting like what we know today as your typical network engineer?
We are going to reach a point where we're going to start to think about the network a little bit differently. At least in terms of how the network interfaces with the rest of the organization. Here's the thing. It's almost easier for me to answer the question a different way and answer the question from the aspect of what isn't going to change, right? The network engineer still has to be well-versed in OSPF and BGP and well-known transitive attributes and route maps and prefix lists and ACLs and interface. None of that is going to change, and network automation will never change that. As a matter of fact, I assert that you have to become even a better network engineer to truly understand the power that network automation brings. Because the better network engineer you are, the better you're going to be at automating it. So, automation is really attempting to kind of do away with some of that mundane stuff that, let's be honest, you really don't want to be doing that, 8 hours a day either. So, and I think that that's really how we're going to see it, continue to evolve.
The way I see it is, things are still going to break just as, just the same as with network automation. There still also has to be that person that understands not only
that's right
how the network's working, but also how the automation's affecting it. And you're going to be that much more valuable as of a resource. I'm curious for, I asked earlier, for professionals looking to get started in automation, your advice, but do you have any specific like tools or platforms, you recommend them to, start using to start exploring and dabbling in network automation?
Absolutely. And I'll just share you from my own personal experiences and experiences I've seen from other individuals, because everyone's journey is going to be different. Let's start there. Okay. That being said, you look at the work that's going on in the community, the tremendous work that's going on in the NetMiko community, mostly spearheaded by Kirk Byers, right? I mean, he's doing a tremendous job really kind of driving how you get started with network automation. You look at what's going on in the Ansible community and what they've done around network automation and the things that they're delivering. Even we see a lot of network automation, questions and answers starting to show up in places like Stack Overflow, which that was unheard of 5 years ago. But now we're actually starting to see legitimate answers there. And that's what I mean by just kind of get started and just try it. You can't do wrong. The other thing I'll mention is, also think through about, how do you get infrastructure to start playing with, and, look at what's going on with, things like Container Lab, and for a long time, GNS3 and EvenG, and these are all tools that are freely available to allow you to get started with, and it really just comes from within. Bring that passion forward and just kind of get started, and you won't regret it.
It just goes back to like, get your hands dirty, start experimenting, start learning. And, there is tons of resources out there to absorb this information. Now, go ahead. Yes.
No, I was just going to add, one other thing. I think recently we just, for those who don't know, and this is not a plug, I promise, but for those of you who don't know, we just started the Network Automation Forum. It's got about a year now. We've gone through three conferences, 01 and 2. But it's another area of resource of like-minded individuals. They've got a public Slack channel, right? Another area where you can get involved and be around people who are really, they're going through the same things that you potentially are, and it's just an opportunity to really network with, excuse the pun, network with networking people who are really trying to figure out how to make sense of this automation journey.
Well, speaking of a plug, so you're the product manager at Itential, which is a network automation company. Mm-hmm. How is Itential addressing network automation today for network engineers?
Yeah. So at Itential, we actually look at the world around network automation as really kind of in two different ways. We look at it from the aspect of builders, and we look at it from the aspect of operators. And those are not the same individual. In some cases they are, but traditionally they're not the same individual. And what we mean by that is that there are individuals that want to go out there and build network automation. Now, that's a really abstract, obscure term, but it's those individuals that are really they're coming from the network engineering ranks, and they're really wanting to build the tools and infrastructure and capabilities for doing network automation. And then the operator side of the world, which says, I don't care how you've done what you've done. I don't care about your magic. I just want to consume it, right? I just want to execute it. And that's kind of that operator persona. And so we're really starting to see that split between those two personalities, and how when networking teams take what they do and turn it over to that operations team, but do it in such a way that they can go to sleep at night knowing when that operator executes whatever it is they execute, they're not going to get the phone call and have to get up and do what they do at 3 a.m.
No, it's setting the organization, the operators up for success. So that's really, really interesting. And I'm definitely interested to learn more, but that's for our next episode we're doing with you guys over there at Itential. Now, what advice would you give, IT leaders to start fostering this culture of network automation within their teams and start creating opportunities for both the organizations and the individual team members?
Yeah, this is such a critical question. When we first started on this journey, and I think back to very early on, it was always kind of that one network engineering weirdo over in the corner that he was kind of had he was doing his thing, and we all watched him, and okay, he's writing code, whatever. I'm going to go back to my CLI. But I think that what we're learning is that network automation is fundamentally capable of transforming how you think about operating and exposing capabilities from your network. However, in order for the organization to truly realize those benefits, it has to be something that becomes a top-down initiative. It has to be something that is embraced at all levels of the organization. So what I would say to those leaders is, you don't have to go out and build a big business case around this. You don't have to have a big, well-defined project. Just embrace those individuals. Try to foster a culture of automation and transform automation from being something you do, i.e. a verb, to a noun, i.e. a mindset. And if you can start to instill it as a mindset, you'll be amazed at how much impact that really does have in terms of how your network will run going forward.
I'm just curious from your personal perspective, what's the best way, to implement that as a mindset? Is it through protocols and procedures, or is it just through fostering discussion? And what do you see as the best way to do that?
It's certainly not through technical bits, right? Technical bits in my mind are all implementation details. That's like saying, what's better, OSPF or ISIS? I mean, we could spend a long time on that conversation. Yeah. But it really is, it's about driving the idea of the mindset. Let me give you a perfect for instance. Driving that mindset is all about, when the next network change has to happen, right? Instead of having a maintenance window with a written mop where we're typing in commands, challenge the organization to re-encode that in automation. However they want to do that, whether that's writing a script, whether that's using something like an Ansible, however they want to go do that, but challenge them and push them to say, this is something we're repeating every week, every month, every quarter, whatever the case is. So let's automate it so we don't have to do it manually every single time.
I think to be successful at that, you have to have a decent understanding as an individual of what's going on. And because as the organization starts adopting this, they're going to start coming to you for advice. If you're the one that's trying to spearhead this project, you have to be well versed in it and willing to know there's going to be growing pains with this and understand the long-term goal. This isn't something you're just going to slam in overnight and say, we're doing this. This is how it goes. There's going to be an adoption period you're going to have to invest in. And there's going to be growing pains. Absolutely.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, that's exactly it, right? And that's what I mean by transforming it from being something you do at a point in time to really make it a mindset, make it a way that you start thinking about everything that you do, because that's really how you start to adopt automation. And what's interesting about that is it can start as simple. We kind of laughed and started the session with this, but it's very true. It can be something as simple as the only thing you automate for the first quarter of a year is you automate setting the description on an interface. But guess what? You're doing automation, and that's getting you started. And it will grow from there. But it is incumbent upon leaders, whether it's at the team leader perspective, at the manager, the director, wherever that however that hierarchy lays out. It is incumbent upon leaders to really foster that and instill that in their teams that this is the direction to move in.
Now, I know some of the audience is just getting into the tech industry, and they might not even be at a networking engineer level. Do you recommend when someone is just starting to learn networking that they should also be diving into automation right away, or do they really need some fundamentals knowledge first?
Well, certainly, I think you absolutely have to have the fundamental knowledge, no question about it. You can learn it along the way, but I think it is absolutely important that we recognize that as networking professionals, whether it's day zero, you're just getting started, or you've got your 10-year CCIE emeritus, right? It is important to understand that being a network engineer comes with a way of thinking, right? In terms of how we approach building infrastructure, designing infrastructure, managing infrastructure. And it's important to learn those fundamentals, because here's the thing. There is no silver bullet in automation. There's no magic pill to swallow.
Why, the real silver bullet is truth.
If you don't fundamentally understand the technology, you cannot automate it. It's as simple as that. So, what I would tell those individuals is, you still have to learn the craft of networking. No question about it. And then start to infuse automation into it where it makes sense to infuse it.
You can't automate the network if you don't fully understand how it works. So, you have to have those fundamental knowledge.
That's correct.
Once you have gotten that good foundational knowledge and you start tinkering around, I feel like then you can start dabbling in automation, and I think it's a great thing to start from the beginning. I definitely think it's harder to go backwards, like to be this expert network engineer that's trying to adapt automation to their processes, than starting from the beginning and slowly ramping up your network automation skills as you ramp up your network engineering skills.
It's funny you say that. I love that. I love that comment, because it's so right. And let me give you a great example of this. When you've been doing a networking for a long time, and let's just say you're building on a lab, a new infrastructure, whatever the case is, and this is going to be an OSPF infrastructure. And it's like, we've done it, for those of us who have done it long enough, we intrinsically can log into, name your favorite vendor, don't care who it is, and we can bang out the OSPF config and the interface config and get things up and running. But if you really think about, when you've been doing it as long as we have, is we almost skip to the end, and then we go back and we'll do something like show IP OSPF and realize, the adjacency, I got to go change this and I got to go change that, and right, and that's just naturally how we do things. But what automation teaches you, and this is where I think automation is really key, is that it does teach you to start taking those problems and take you all the way back to the beginning and start rethinking about them in those discrete ordered steps that need to happen. And because of that, that's one of the great benefits of automation, because now we get back to the basics. Even though we got all this knowledge, we get back to the basics, and getting back to the basics allows us to build better engineered, more stable, more robust network infrastructures. And that's really, I think, one of the huge wins with automation, especially for more experienced engineers.
So if you were to go back and tell your younger self when you're just starting out, what is one piece of advice you would give to yourself to really jumpstart your network automation? But before you answer that, if people want to connect with you or, pick your brain some more on this, where can they find you?
Oh gosh, you can find me on LinkedIn, Peter Sprygada or in/Sprygada. You can also find me on Twitter @PrivateIP is my handle. So hit me there. I'm both on Twitter and on Mastodon, and do respond to that quite a bit. And then also I mentioned the Network Automation Forum Slack channel, which is a public Slack channel. Anyone's welcome to join. You'll find me out there. So those are all three places that I do respond to all the time.
That is super cool, and we're gonna make sure and link up to those, especially the Slack channel, just so, because that is a great resource. And one thing I think, I know I'm skipping the question I just asked you, but one thing I think is really useful in the networking industry is to network with people and pick their brains, because if you're doing something with network automation, it can help multiple people. Like if you learn something new with network automation, you don't know how many people that can actually help. Or if you're stuck on a problem, and you put it out into the community, there is a wealth of knowledge out there.
There absolutely is. And what is so exciting is the number of people that are willing to share. As I said at the beginning, right? I mean, there's nothing better than talking a little tech, whether it's let's talk about the latest, evolving trends in, EVPN designs, or talking about, how best to approach a network automation problem. And even for myself, who've been doing this for, 25 plus years, I still love engaging these conversations. So, I'm always happy to talk with anybody on any of those forums. Just reach out, say hi, and let's just talk. I mean, that's how we all get better. I learn something new every single day from every single conversation I have.
Absolutely. And now I got to go back to the question I asked you before people start jumping down my throat in the comments. What is that one piece of advice you would give to your younger self?
Wow, the one piece. Wow, how do I distill that down to a single piece?
Yeah, no, it can be multiple pieces. We don't want to put you under that much pressure.
I think the one piece of advice is that I would give myself is, don't be impatient with it. Take the time to let it come. When I was very young and just getting started in this industry, whether I was doing software, whether I was doing networking, it's like I wanted to skip to the end immediately every single time. It's like I wanted to design, the global network infrastructure, going in my old days, that was, my days track all the way back to ATM frame relay, right? So I wanted to design, the world's largest ATM frame relay network that was all traffic engineered, that had all of the great bells and whistles. I would go back and tell myself that, I think one of the greatest attributes of being a really good engineer is how simple can you make things. Don't create complexity for complexity's sake. Really try and focus on how simple can I make it and still achieve my goals.
That is like some of the best advice, because I think us as network engineers, we almost like to make it overcomplicated. We like to, we're going to dive in and we're going to, excuse my language, but network automate the shit out of this. We're just going to go dive in deep.
Guilty. Guilty.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all are guilty. Keep it simple, don't over engineer. Don't, we're all guilty of that, especially once we get bit by that bug, I feel.
That's right. That's exactly right. Yes, without question.
Well, Peter, thank you so much for just being a wealth of knowledge in this, sector of network engineering. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing this advice with us.
I really appreciate you having me. This has been absolutely fantastic. It doesn't get any better than this. I mean, I could do this for much longer than anyone wants to sit down and listen to it for. That is for sure. But no, this has been great.
We're going to have you back because I have more questions that we didn't get to. I just want to be respectful of your time this afternoon.
I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait to be back.
Absolutely. Well, everyone, again, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. And until next time, keep learning.